school, and I love to bake. Before I became a teacher, I baked for one of our local coffee shops, and it was really fun. And so during this time, I'm baking again. And today, my project is hot cross buns. It's my mom's recipe. She makes these every year, and she gives them to all of her neighbors. So she is making hot cross buns today too, and I am as well, and I'm excited sharing this with her. Yes, hot cross buns. They have to refrigerate overnight, which is why I'm starting them today. And then tomorrow we'll bake them and get to enjoy them for breakfast. So, ingredients. First of all, we use flour here. Of course, it's going to take lots of flour, 4 to 4.5 cups of flour. Lots of flour. Sugar. We are going to be putting some cinnamon in these hot cross buns. You can see we go through lots of cinnamon at our house. That's why we have a big container. Hot cross buns also take raisins. If you don't like raisins, you can leave them out. Yeast. We're going to need some yeast so that the rolls will rise. We'll also be using a couple of eggs. These are special eggs because they're from a friend. And milk, as well as butter, and then of course some salt. Yeah, I think that's about it as far as ingredients go. Trying to get to 120 degrees, so I'm going to use my handy little thermometer here. We are actually just over 120, so now we're ready to add our liquid ingredients to our dry ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and pour in these liquid ingredients here into my dry ingredients. And I have to beat this mixture for 2 minutes. All right, so that was 2 minutes at medium speed. Now you can also do this in a stand mixer if you have one of those. I'm just choosing to do it this way today. Our next step is to add 2 eggs and half a cup of flour. So there's our flour, 2 eggs. And now we have to beat this mixture for another 2 minutes on high speed. All right, so that was 2 minutes. The next thing I'm going to do is just scrape down the sides of my bowl before I start adding the rest of my flour. All right, and what we're going to do is add the rest of our flour in half a cup increments until the dough is soft. And so as I add the flour, I'm just going to stir. So this is kind of where you got to use your muscle because it starts getting hard to stir right about now. So you just want to stir in all this flour until you get a nice soft dough. As you can see, this can take a few minutes. We'll do just a little bit more. Now for this part, you'll want to flour your counter nicely so your dough doesn't stick. I also like to keep extra flour out as I need it for my hands. And we'll just dump it out on the counter. All right, so I'm going to knead the dough for 5 minutes. And after we knead it for 5 minutes, we're going to let it rise for 20 minutes. All right, but as you can see, this is what your dough is going to look like, hopefully, before you knead it. Like I said, we're just going to knead this dough for 5 minutes. All right, you want to be sure that your surface is nice and floured so the dough doesn't stick. So you might have to add a little bit more flour as you go, and you might have to flour your hands as you go as well. But the goal is just to get the dough nice and smooth and elastic. So you'll do this for about 5 minutes. So when I'm letting my dough rise, I always just put a little dollop of oil in my bowl. You can also use butter to rub your bowl with. Any type of oil really will do, as long as it's a tasteless oil. And then I just drop it in my bowl, and I'm gonna kind of work the oil around and then flip it over so that the oiled part is on the top, and then I'll wrap it in saran wrap, and that way if it rises enough to the saran wrap, which I don't think it will, because this usually doesn't rise a ton, but the saran wrap won't stick to the dough. All right, so it's really fun when you have dough that's risen a lot and you can really punch it down. That's super fun. This, of course, is not that much, but I'll punch it down anyways. That's pretty fun. Y'all probably didn't hear the sound it made, but it's a fun one. Okay, so we're gonna take our dough out, divide it in half. You want to shape each half into 12 balls, and those will be your hot cross buns, okay? All right, so then with each of these pieces, we are just going to round it into a nice little ball, and that's your hot cross bun. Yay. You wanna let these rise in your refrigerator for about 24 hours. If you're trying to do this last minute, you can do it as little as 2 hours, but the longer you let them rise, the better they are. If you have a big refrigerator, you can put them directly on the pans you're gonna bake them on. All right, so I just got our hot cross buns out of the refrigerator. They've been there all night, and they're looking and smelling very yummy. I'm going to let them rest for 10 minutes before I bake them. All right, so now comes the fun part. I'm going to cut across on each one of these buns. So you do want to go kind of deep, okay, because if you don't go enough, then it's not gonna look like a cross at all after you bake them. So be sure you use a nice sharp knife, but be careful. All right, so my hot cross buns are ready to bake now. My oven has preheated at 375, and these should take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to bake. While the buns are baking in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and make the glaze. And it's real simple. It's just 2 cups of powdered sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, and then 2 tablespoons of milk. I'm gonna sift my powdered sugar into the bowl here. And we'll just do this a cup at a time because it gets a little messy. All right, so as you can see, we made a really big mess with the powdered sugar. It's always better to get a bigger bowl than you think you need, and I don't really know what I was thinking, but yeah, so we made a mess, but that's okay. Now I'm gonna add my vanilla extract. That's just 1 teaspoon. And then we add 2 tablespoons of milk. Doesn't really matter what kind of milk, just use whatever you have on hand. Once you've added your extract, once you've added your vanilla and your milk, you just want to give it a good whisk. If the glaze is too thick, you can always add a little bit more milk to thin it out, which I think I might need to do. All right, it's been about 18 minutes and I think they're done. So I'm gonna take them out of the oven. And we'll just let them cool here for a few minutes before I top them with the glaze. So the hot cross buns have cooled, probably enough to glaze them. So we are just gonna go ahead and get a clean spoon, because this one isn't clean. All right, so this is where it gets a little messy, and some of you all out there might be better at this than me, but I usually just take a spoon of glaze and just spoon it over the top of each. I do like to put the hot cross buns on a cooling rack over a pan while I glaze them, and then that way the extra glaze that runs off ends up on the pan, and you can scrape it back off with a spatula and reuse it instead of letting it be wasted. So we're done making our hot cross buns. I really enjoyed sharing this tradition with you all. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, and have a wonderful Easter.